This man murdered his girlfriend, fled the country, and changed his identity about 15 times. On April 17, 2020, 50-year-old Tyler Adams and his girlfriend, 40-year-old Raquel Sabine, crossed the border into Tijuana, Mexico with their 7-month-old baby, Valentina. On May 31st, almost a month later, Raquel's decomposing body was found in the trunk of a vehicle in Tijuana when residents complained about a foul odor. Tyler was detained in Mexico after there was an Amber Alert for their 7-month-old daughter, but once they found the baby safe, he was able to cross into the US using a fake ID with the name Aaron Bain. Tyler is constantly using fake IDs, and he's changed his appearance about 15 times to avoid being recognized by police. And many people think that he's had many surgeries and procedures done to his face in order to throw off police. Tyler also has a warrant out for him in Hawaii from September 2020. Police think that Tyler is hiding out somewhere in San Diego, but I think this guy is super dangerous and has done more than what police think.
Here's an extremely insane case. There's gonna be a lot of parts, and warning, this is extremely disturbing. So this is Jasmine Richardson. I'm covering a gun right now because I don't want to get it taken down. She's a 12-year-old girl from Medicine Hat, Alberta, Canada. So this is her prior to meeting her boyfriend. Her parents described her as a sweet Catholic honors student. But then she went to her goth phase and went on vampirefreaks.com and met this guy, Jeremy, who is 23 years old, and she's 12. Well, he definitely was pretty odd. He wore a vial of blood on his neck because he claimed he was a 300-year-old werewolf. He also was a high school dropout who lived in a trailer. So apparently she and Jeremy met up at a mall after talking on vampirefreaks.com, and from there, they basically loved each other. The parents did not approve of this. They grounded her, sent her to counseling, took away her computer. Go check out part 2 on my page. Part 2, just a reminder, this case is extremely disturbing. So Jeremy referred to himself as a soul eater, and after they both met up at the mall, the parents found out and grounded her. Jeremy still managed to email her, and he sent her this message. "You were a sight for sore eyes, and I miss you more than killing people. Can we get together and kill people together?" What? After that email, the parents took away the computer and took her to counseling. So the parents assumed Jasmine was okay, so they gave her computer back. On April 23rd, 2006, the neighbors called the police saying that their son went over to Jasmine's house to get his best friend, who was Jacob, her 8-year-old brother, and the little boy freaked out because he said he saw bodies in the basement. When police arrived, they found the parents stabbed to death. The mom was stabbed 12 times and the dad was stabbed 48 times. And the little brother's throat was slit. There was blood everywhere. Go watch Part 3, reminder, this is disturbing. So when police saw the bodies, they saw a picture with the little girl and they were looking for her and couldn't find her, which was Jasmine. They assumed that the murderer abducted the little girl. So a day later, they got a tip from Jasmine's friends saying that they saw the couple at a party and they were bragging about killing her parents, saying that they gutted them like fish. They end up getting caught trying to escape. And Jeremy admitted to killing the parents, but he said that she killed the little brother. Jasmine, of course, denied it, but then she admitted it, saying that she felt bad and didn't want him to be an orphan. So a month before the killings, Jasmine wrote Jeremy and said this: "So I have this plan. It begins with me killing them and ends with me living with you." Apparently, there's a movie on this called Natural Born Killers and a book called The Runaway Devil. Go check it out.
He murdered women because he believed God was telling him to. This is the story of the Yorkshire Ripper, and buckle in, this is a rough, bumpy ride, so, of course, trigger warning. Peter Sutcliffe was born in 1946 in Bingley, Yorkshire, and, you know, as the story goes, his childhood was the epitome of tragic. And it started from birth. He was born at only 5 pounds, and they believe that this caused some issues for him. Then fast forward to his schooling, where he was just ruthlessly bullied to the point where he dropped out of school at the age of 15. In his teenage years, he began working as a gravedigger, and he had a really just poor reputation among his co-workers. They said he had a really, really odd and morbid sense of humor, and this sort of alienated him against them. But this is where his fascination with the strange, unusual, and macabre really started. On top of this, he also had a really weird obsession with watching prostitutes. But surprisingly, he led a pretty normal life while his weird interests blossomed. In 1974, he married Sonia Zerma, his longtime girlfriend. And this is when he got his license to be a truck driver. So him being gone for weeks at a time was never questioned. At the same time that this happened, he lost his contentment just watching prostitutes. His murder spree officially began in 1975, even though some say it might have started as early as 1969. His first two victims ultimately survived and were left very traumatized and just messed up because his attacks were very, very painful and drawn out, and he would ultimately be interrupted for both of them and left both women lying in a puddle of their own blood. On October 30th, 1975, Wilma Mccann, a mother of four and also a prostitute, became his first victim. Her murder was brutal and ruthless, to say the least. This is where the trigger warning comes in. He hit her over the head with a hammer twice and then proceeded to stab her multiple times. His next victim was 42-year-old Emily Jackson, of course, also a sex worker. He kept his pattern of hitting her over the head with a hammer multiple times and then sharpened a screwdriver where he stabbed her 52 times with it. But this was the first murder where he made a mistake. He left a boot print on her thigh. After this, his victimology started to grow, and he started attacking women that weren't prostitutes or sex workers. Marcella Claxton was the first one, but she survived. 16-year-old Janie McDonald was not as lucky, though. Even though Peter was questioned multiple times, police failed to make very, very obvious connections. So it took them until 1981 to figure out he was the one committing these murders. Part 2 up right away. Are you guys surprised that Peter Sutcliffe got away with murdering women for as long as he did, even though police had sufficient evidence? Because I'm not surprised. This is the typical frickin' story of all of these crimes that I research and tell you guys about. Anyways, I'm gonna stop complaining, get back to the story, let's go. Part 2. Even though his victims weren't only prostitutes in the end, he still targeted only women and women that were in very vulnerable positions or easy to kill, so to say. And even though 150 police officers were on the investigation of the Yorkshire Ripper, it took them a ridiculous amount of time to actually catch him. There was an incredible amount of evidence pointing to Peter, and it would have been a very easy deduction, but police kept getting thrown off by people claiming to be the Yorkshire Ripper, or they believed his alibi, which was a total hoax. After he successfully got away with it and eluded the police, he attacked another prostitute, Marilyn Moore, who ended up surviving and providing the police with a description of Peter Sutcliffe. Even after this, they were unable to make the connection. They literally interviewed him a total of 9 times, and he got away every single time. This is the same song and dance, and I'm so honestly concerned that this happens so often. And then while awaiting trial for drunk driving in 1980, he killed 2 more women and attacked 3 others. And then in November, one of Sutcliffe's acquaintances actually reported him to the police and filled out all this paperwork, which subsequently vanished. It just vanished. Finally, on January 2nd of 1981, Sutcliffe was arrested for having false plates on his car, and the police officers that arrested him realized that he looked strikingly like the description of the Yorkshire Ripper. And then after 2 days of interrogation, Peter confessed. He stood trial for 13 murders but pled not guilty and claimed that he had schizophrenia and that God told him to commit these heinous acts. This entire time, his wife had no idea what was going on. She was happily married to the man she thought he was. He told her the same story, that the word of God, yada, 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 whatever. And she might have believed him, but it didn't matter because he was arrested for 13 counts of murder and sentenced to 20 life sentences. But that's not all. Obviously, in 1984, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, sent to a psychiatric hospital, and his wife divorced him. He was attacked by his inmates and fellow whatever, and then at 74 years old, he died of COVID. So, what do you guys think? Oh, God.
A Florida bride was arrested for allegedly drugging all the guests at her wedding. On February 19th, 42-year-old Danya Svoboda and her husband had around 50 guests at their wedding. No one announced that the food would be laced with marijuana. So as guests started eating, they started to feel the effects. One woman asked the bride and caterer if she had been drugged. They both said yes and were excited and giggly. The woman then went to her car and tried to sleep. She also sent a text to herself in case she died in her car so people would know what happened. Another guest was so freaked out by the effects that her husband called paramedics. Several guests went to the hospital and took urine tests which came back positive for cannabis. Svoboda's husband was not arrested, but Jocelyn Bryant, her food caterer, was. They've both been charged with tampering with food and delivering marijuana. They could face up to 5 years in prison and a $500 fine.